Hi guys! So in this video I will continue building my home makerspace, which I want to create to gain more workspace and storage. In the previous video I went over starting to work on the maple counter, as well as sewing curtains and assembling the top cabinet frame. Now let's start back up again where I left off with the counter. So for this counter, I'm using rough sawn big leaf maple. So I've been working with these large chunks of wood, flattening them enough to cut down on the table saw. The goal here is to create many even larger pieces which I can glue together, kind of like creating one huge cutting board. This wood though, it is quite challenging to work with. It has a lot of tension and twists and turns, and it's simply difficult to work with such large pieces of wood. So a lot of work has gone into this, and now the pieces are in much more manageable sizes. Once I had these longer pieces, I brought them into the shop and looked them over. Now, many had knots and defects at certain areas, so I either marked out where to cut them to get straight, shorter pieces, or I planed them down where they were bowed. It is really quite a puzzle to figure out which pieces are straight enough to glue up and to piece that together right. And there's just so much wood to work with here. So basically, I'm checking, are they straight? If not, cut apart, add a knot. Repeat many, many times. And I'm cutting away at the knots to minimize the overall waste. Then I use my DIY jointer once the pieces are smaller, and I run each piece through several times to get them flat and even. Then finally, I start to glue up sections. My goal here is to glue up many of these smaller boards and then finally glue them all together. And of course I want to make sure I've got good clamping pressure on all sides. Once I have larger sections glued up, then begin the work of flattening each individual section. And I like to start that off with a hand plane. But now, let's leave the counter until next time and move on to the cabinets. Now previously I made the frame for the upper cabinets, and now it's time to work on the doors. I'm using pre-primed Purebond Plywood here, which I actually ordered off the Home Depot website, so that was really convenient to get it delivered and everything. Using pre-primed plywood will save me at least one painting step later, which is great. And I'm cutting out the pieces for the frames of the doors. And here is kind of what they will look like. To connect these door frames together, I'm simply using pocket screws. And I'm doing this because it is quick and easy and holds together perfectly. And these little clamps here make it so much easier to line everything up right. And they fit quite nicely on top of the cabinet frame. I'm using some really nice hinges to attach these doors to the cabinets, and this Rockler jig really comes in handy to line everything up right. Then once the large hole is drilled, you simply screw in the hinges. To fill in the middle of the door, I decided to simply use a thin hardboard. And I really like this because it makes the doors really nice and light. And I simply stapled these down onto the frame, and that worked perfectly. Next, I need to cut up some more plywood for the larger cabinets right below the smaller upper ones. and I'm cutting up larger pieces for the main frames as well as narrow strips to create the door frames. Now, what I really like about this Purebond plywood is that it's made with formaldehyde-free soy-based glue. So you won't get any bad stuff seeping out through the plywood over time, and that's just one of those things which you might not think about generally, but that really matters. So I now have these cabinets up on the wall as well, the same construction as the top ones. And I'm debating about how I want this now. Remember, initially I put up these brackets to hold these top ones, and now it's creating this kind of gap here. And it kind of made me think about how I don't actually need to create it this way. I can secure these to the wall and then have this unit simply lean on these two. So first of all, I screwed on some backs to the cabinets, countersinking first, and then put them back up on the wall. And here you can see some of this plywood which I'm patching together to form a backsplash. And once this is all spackled in, you won't see the seams at all. Getting a little extra lifting help from my father-in-law.
Is that good, Lynn?
And as you can see, the upper cabinet is now resting directly onto the bottom ones. I also have the hinges up there. Here are all the doors, and to hide the pocket holes, I'm just using spackle, which works great. For the edges of the plywood on the doors, I'm using some edge banding. And this is really easy to put on. You simply iron and trim if necessary. Now for the knobs, I am making my own. So I have a chunk of mahogany here, which I'm cutting to pieces, finding the center and drilling a hole. Then I have this mandrel on the lathe, so screwing it in and turning the piece around. And I have my calipers here to ensure I make them all the same size, more or less. Rounding the corners a bit and then sanding smooth. And all in all, I need 6 for the top cabinets. And to connect this all, I have this neat knob turning kit, which is really easy to put together, and I love that it makes it very simple to make knobs out of any material. Then it was just a matter of attaching the knobs to the doors. As well as clicking the door hardware in place. So that's where we are now. Don't forget to subscribe to follow along how this project turns out. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!